And welcome back to Talking Loan TV. I'm Michael Short, and we're here with Gene Brooks and special guest James Sloan of Georgia Team. Was it Georgia Crash Team?
Crash Teams Georgia.
Crash Teams Georgia. It sounds ominous.
It is what it is.
Okay, and Gene Brooks, and we're here to talk about accident reconstruction.
Yeah. James has helped me on some cases, so I thought it would be good for him to explain what he does and how he does accident reconstruction.
When we have an example here, I'll just go ahead and bring that up right away. There's your logo, and here is the accident we're talking about, and this looks like a semi-truck and a car being in the same place at the same time, which is generally not a good idea.
Yeah, the car generally loses in that scenario, and in this case, that is exactly what happened. The process of accident reconstruction is one of collecting and analyzing physical evidence from a particular crash, and then applying the laws of physics, some math, and some accepted methodologies and principles to come to a conclusion about what happened in the crash, speeds and causes and contributions, why it happened, and hopefully we can find ways to prevent such collisions from happening in the future by doing that research.
Is there a formula you use to figure out exactly sort of what happened, the chronology of events that led from safety to ultimately the collision?
Well, sure. In a case such as the one we're looking at here, an intersection collision is all about the speed and the time and the distance relationships of two objects in motion. So we use some methods and some math to come up with the speed, for instance, in this case of the tractor trailer. We know that based on the distance traveled, the coefficient of friction of the roadway, and plugging that back in, we're able to come up and determine that this truck was moving at about 55 miles an hour the time the impact occurred. Well, knowing that 55 miles an hour is about 80.6 feet per second, we can start looking at where this truck was in time and distance when the car started pulling out. So that's how we use that within the intersection realm to understand the relationship, and then applying that back to perhaps in this case the signal timing. How long was the light red? How long was it yellow? When did it turn green? And in this case, the car had the green light and the car pulled forward on a green light up to impact.
Well, typically, when do you get involved in a case?
Well, earlier is better in all instances. We have a photograph up here. This was in New Orleans. This is 14 vehicles on a bridge during a tropical storm. So this is a chaotic environment, but there is, even in the rain, even in this chaos, there is physical evidence to be obtained, but some of it is fairly short-lived. Some tire marks, scuff marks on the roadway, scratches, scrapes, and gouges, things that we may be able to glean from the roadway, can be very short-lived, sometimes a matter of hours, sometimes a matter of days. Whereas a skid mark out on a country road with little traffic may last a year. So it's sort of situationally dependent, but the earlier the better. When there are multiple vehicles involved, different insurance carriers have different priorities. They'll take them out of storage, put them to salvage or disposal lots, and so the longer that the time goes on, the more things get scattered and disarrayed. So the earlier the better, and frankly, the earlier that we can get involved in a matter, we can let Gene or our other clients know exactly where they stand early so that they can make decisions about how to carry that case forward.
In a non-fatality, do the police do a very good job of taking photographs?
It's really dependent upon the department, and it's dependent upon the officer sometimes. We have still a lot of guys carrying personal cameras, and they'll take good photographs, good digital quality photographs, and it really boils down to what is that department's philosophy about investigating accidents. Is it just clear the road and generate a report and be done with it, or is it focused more on actually doing an investigation to understand what happened and to prevent them in the future? But a few measurements and a few good quality photographs will go a long way to helping us reconstruct an accident.
Gene, when do you normally get called? I mean, is some of this evidence still there, or is it?
Well, sometimes it is, and it's, you know, if it has been recent, then I'll call Jim right away, or call someone to come up there and take a look. But I think in the one investigation I remember you did for us out in the countryside, you weren't able to get up there for probably 6 to 8 months later.
Correct.
And fortunately, there were some gouges in the road that James was able to use, as well as some he was able to go see the truck, because the truck, we located that in the record service. So he was able to get some good information from that as well.
What can you tell from a wrecked vehicle?
Well, part of what you're able to do is depend on crash tests that we conduct and that are conducted by the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. Conducting crashes under a controlled environment and analyzing how vehicles are damaged in that environment helps us to take and extrapolate that, that damage pattern and come up with things such as speed from the crush damage, the angle of impact, the directionality of movement of the occupants inside. And then we also learn a lot by inspecting the vehicle, what the mechanical condition, tires, brakes, steering, those sorts of things. If there was a mechanical failure that may have led to the car not operating properly, and those sorts of things. So we do what we call a vehicular autopsy, which is an in-depth forensic examination of the vehicle to see where, what it can tell us about the wreck, and then what it can tell us about why the wreck may have happened.
Now, do cars have like black boxes on them?
Well, everybody calls them black. They're actually silver. But that is a technology that is really emerging. That has been in place since the mid-90s in some General Motors vehicles. But in 2012, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration has dictated that in 2012, every light truck and passenger vehicle sold in the U.S. will have some sort of data capturing ability. And that's really what we're talking about in the black boxes. Present technology, we're able to get data from General Motors vehicles, Chrysler, Ford vehicles, and some over-the-road commercial vehicles. And that gives us information such as speed, engine RPM, throttle position, brake on, brake off, whether the ABS was engaged, whether the cruise was on, what the steering wheel angle may have been. And it's make and model dependent, but we're rapidly coming to a point where that's going to be available from every passenger car and light truck, certainly.
Is this the chip that's kept in the airbag area?
Well, there are various modules throughout the vehicle. One is the airbag control module, and what the data that we're using is generated by is that airbag module's analysis of an impact and its decision to deploy or not deploy is all based on an algorithm and changes in acceleration. And then as its kind of last dying act, it writes a data file, and that's what we're going and looking at. That's also available from some vehicle powertrain control modules, ABS modules, and then the engine control modules on certain commercial vehicles.
Gene, if I'm the bad guy and my little chip in my car shows I'm the bad guy, what can I keep you from getting it out of my car to prove that I was wrong?
Well, typically we can obtain the information with the court order if the defendant does not want to produce it. But James is also, we've been talking about this type of data, and you have to be careful with it too. It has to be interpreted because certain models shut down, for instance, and don't record data, and so the data you get may be erroneous if you're not that familiar with the vehicle.
So have you found people trying to dispose of their chips?
Well, a lot of times there is some confusion in a case because Georgia doesn't have a law or a statute specifically addressing this issue. So what it falls back to is a lot of the pre-existing computer data law. Basically, if you own the computer, you own the data. So if you own the car, you own the data. But if the insurance company has paid you for a totaled out vehicle, now the insurance company owns the data. So it's just a matter of finding out, tracking that chain of possession and finding out where you can plug in. But I think that there has been good success. I think that there has come to a point where most plaintiff and defense litigators recognize that it's there, that it's just data. It doesn't have an opinion. It doesn't say anything positive or negative. It just gives us another analysis point to work with.
Here, you have shown up here now a copy of what we call the black box. If you go to the next frame down, you'll show, I believe, some of the data. This is some of the data that you can get off of it.
This is a pretty typical output from, in this case, a Ford powertrain control module. This is the the engine control module. I think this was out of a Lincoln town car. But what we see here is a fairly lengthy time period. Up to fairly recently, we were limited to about sometimes 2, sometimes 5 seconds prior to impact, or even shorter. In this case, we're all the way up here 90 seconds worth of data. So this dark line that we see, this is the vehicle ground speed coming in. The green line, the up and down line here, is the accelerator. And then this red line here is the brake. Now we know, for instance, when the brake is on, it's not a percentage, it's just either an on or an off condition. So we know that the driver was on the brake, but this solid line down at the bottom tells us that the ABS system was never engaged. So he was on the brake, but not really hard on the brake. So we start to see this deceleration right here in the timeline. This is pre-impact braking, and then we start to see this rapid spiking down. That's where we're able to identify the impact point. So this vehicle was traveling at or near about 60 miles an hour when the impact occurred, had been traveling about 10 miles an hour higher than that immediately prior to.
Okay, well, thank you so much, James. Thank you, Gene. I know you're going to stick around and answer some viewer mail questions. We'll be right back with more right after this.